Okay, so you guys really outdid yourselves this time with these sources. A non-consecutive second term for Trump. This is,
Uncharted territory.
yeah, really uncharted.
Yeah.
And, we've got Wikipedia to give us that kind of like broad overview.
Right. Sets the stage. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we've got the Wall Street Journal. So we're going to be looking at things through more of an economic lens
Of
there.
course. Of course. Always got to follow the money.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then to round things out, we have AP News, which is going to give us that, boots on the ground perspective.
Love AP. They're always right there in the thick of it.
Yeah. So it's January 20th, 2025.
Mm.
America is officially entering this, like we said, uncharted territory, Trump's second inauguration. But this time he's coming back after,
Losing a term.
yeah, which has never happened before.
Yeah.
And so what we're really looking at today is, what do these sources tell us? What clues do we have about where America's headed under this, like, unprecedented second Trump presidency?
I think one of the first things that jumps out at me is the location of the inauguration. All three of the sources mention that it was moved indoors to the rotunda because it was so cold.
Yeah, and I saw that too, and I was kind of like,
Seemed a little strange.
yeah, like on the surface, it seems practical enough. It's freezing cold outside. Nobody wants to be standing out there.
Of course. Of course.
But, inaugurations are very symbolic events.
Big time. Tons of tradition.
Exactly. And this just seems like a really interesting departure from, how it's been done.
Yeah, and it really makes you wonder if it's a sign of things to come. Is this Trump saying, I'm doing things my way, I'm breaking with the establishment, tradition. We don't need no stinking tradition.
Uh-huh. Well put. But seriously, though, when you then look at the content of his speech and how he's talking about America entering this golden age, ending its decline, and then he uses that interesting phrase, revolution of common sense, it really does feel like he's setting himself apart. It feels deliberate.
Oh, absolutely. And it's fascinating because all of the sources, they touch on these anxieties about the economy, about America's standing in the world. And so when you hear Trump using this language about a golden age, it almost feels like he's tapping into this nostalgia for a time when America was, perceived to be at its peak.
Yeah, it's like make America great again. Again.
Exactly. But 2.0, the sequel. And who doesn't love a good sequel, right?
Not sure about that. I'm a little
No.
worried about this sequel, if I'm being honest.
Uh-huh.
Especially when you consider some of the policies he mentions, mass deportations, tariffs, shrinking the federal government. This all feels very familiar, right? Like we saw a lot of this during his first term. So is this Trump 2.0 just a continuation of what we've already seen, or is it something more?
Well, and that's what I find so fascinating about this, right? Because on the one hand, you have these echoes of his first term, these policies that feel very familiar, but the context has changed. The world is different. America's facing new challenges.
And
And,
he's different. Let's not forget he's older. He's been through a lot.
right. So the question becomes, do these familiar policies mean the same thing in this new context? And the sources kind of hint that maybe they don't. For example, the Wall Street Journal article points out that while tariffs were meant to protect American jobs, they could actually end up making inflation worse.
Which is already a problem.
Exactly. It's like fighting fire with fire. You just end up with a bigger fire.
Okay.
And then you've got the human cost of these policies. Mass deportations, regardless of the reasoning behind them, they're going to disrupt people's lives, separate families. And the AP News piece does a really good job of capturing the fear and uncertainty within immigrant communities right now.
And then there's that, how does he put it? He calls himself a defender of democracy. But then in the same breath, he's advocating for these policies that many people see as,
Undemocratic.
to say the least. It's like, what?
Yeah.
So is this Trump just working with a different definition of democracy? One where individual rights take a backseat to this vision of national identity that he keeps talking about?
It's a really interesting question, and I think it's one that every American is going to have to grapple with in the coming years. Who benefits from this golden age that Trump's promising? Who gets left behind?
And speaking of who benefits, did you notice that both the Wall Street Journal and the AP News articles mentioned that Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg were both at the inauguration? What do you make of that?
I think it's a sign of the times. The tech industry has become such a powerful force in our society, and it seems like Trump recognizes that. And, on the one hand, this alliance could lead to some really interesting innovations, but it also raises concerns about the concentration of power and influence in the hands of a few. Is this good for democracy?
Yeah, it's kind of giving me like sci-fi dystopia vibes.
Mhm.
And Trump is moving fast. All three of the sources mention his plans to sign executive orders on immigration, border security, and energy right out of the gate. It seems like he's trying to bypass Congress, just use executive power to get things done quickly.
Which is going to be interesting to watch. Because the sources also point out that there's likely to be a lot of pushback from Congress, possibly even legal challenges. And then internationally, the world is watching. Other countries aren't just going to sit back and let Trump do whatever he wants.
So much to think about.
Right. It's like, what if we got here this super unusual inauguration? We've got this almost grandiose rhetoric promising a golden age, a revolution based on common sense. But when you look closer at the policies, it's not clear how much has actually changed. And then you've got this alliance with the tech giants that could really shake things up.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot to process.
It is. And as you continue to think about all of this, I want to leave you with this question. What does this second Trump term mean for America's place in the world? Does America become more isolationist or more assertive?
It's a question we all need to be thinking about, and we encourage everyone to continue diving into these sources, form their own opinions. This is just the beginning of the conversation.